Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos. I'm a sociologist who's taught at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and Yeshiva University here in New York City. Union membership has been on a steady decline nationally in America since the middle of the last century. Trade union membership fell to an all-time low in 2023 of 10.1%. In 1983, it was 20%. More than 1 in 3 workers employed by the government, that is about 37%, belong to a union versus 6% of all private sector employees today. In the mid-1950s, it was about 1/3 of the private workforce. Mm-hmm. Local government workers continue to be the most heavily unionized. Now, at the same time, corporations have made profits of nearly $3 trillion in the third quarter of 2022 alone, and their profit margins have reached its widest since 1950. Even with these enormous profits, corporate America continues to try and extract even more money by reducing wages, resisting union organizing, and forcing paybacks to already won benefits for workers and low-income people and retirees. Many are resisting. In New York City, political and economic elites are pushing for a switch to a new health care plan for more than 250,000 retired city workers. New York City employees and their dependents have long received health insurance after retirement. When they become eligible, they enroll in traditional Medicare, and the city also fully subsidizes a popular supplement coverage plan known as senior care. In order to find savings due to rising healthcare costs, however, New York City and Mayor Adams is now pursuing a switch to a wholly privatized plan called Medicare Advantage. Some people call it Medicare Disadvantage, but the formal name is Medicare Advantage. Legislation is now being considered to allow retirees to opt out of Medicare Advantage and keep their current insurance, but at a cost of nearly $200 a month. Retirees will be stuck with a smaller network of providers and larger out-of-pocket costs. We're honored and blessed to have 3 courageous activists from the Cross-Union Retirees Organizing Committee on the show today who are aggressively resisting and fighting back to energize the labor movement in New York City and the entire country. So welcome Martha Cameron, Julia Schwartzberg, and Lizette Colon to the Radical Imagination. Thank you all for being here today. And did I basically get the overview of the subject matter for today correct? Okay, I know this gets complicated, and so that's why we're immediately going to be turning to Julie to help us out and give us a little more flesh and understanding to what's been going on. So Julie, take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim. Thanks for having us. It's great to be here. And I thought I would start off just giving a little personal background, which is that my father was worked in a garment district, and he died very young because he had no health insurance. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, that's not going to happen to me. I am going to get a city job where they guarantee good benefits for life. And I'm going to be in a union because they're going to fight for my rights. And so I did that. And I was very lucky. For 27 years, I worked in the city health department, and I worked as a teacher. And I was in shock in May 2021, almost 2 years ago, more than a year and a half ago. I can't even remember. I was so shocked that someone told me, guess what, Julie? 3 years ago, Mayor de Blasio and the Municipal Labor Committee, which is made up of unions, DC 37 was my union, and UFT, which are predominant in the Municipal Labor Council, that they agreed to take away your Medicare and put you in a Medicare Advantage plan. And I couldn't believe it. I had the most incredible health insurance since I retired 20 years ago. What are you doing? So I posted this on a neighborhood listserv, and a couple of people answered me. One was Martha Cameron, who and we got together and we said, we're going to fight this. And from that, the Cross Union Retirees Organization was born. We are unionists from the UFT, DC 37 locals, the PSC, and others. And we have been fighting this. And I'd like to, if I have a minute, to explain why we're so mad and why we've been fighting so hard for 2 years, or almost 2 years.
Absolutely. Take all the time you need to get mad.
I've been mad for 2 years, so I ain't stopping either.
Take your time now. Yes, we're all getting.
So just for your audience, what we have, and I must say what every person in the United States should have, is we have Medicare, plus we have a Medicare supplement. And that, you mentioned it, Jim, that is paid for by the city of New York. So that's perfect. And we have fantastic insurance. So we were going, why are they switching this? And it turns out, and this is very, very key, that this is a federal issue, that right now, the city pays for our supplement. But if they go to Medicare Advantage, the federal government subsidizes all of those insurance companies that are privatizing our health care. So we didn't want that. If anybody's looking at the newspapers these days, everything is being, these privatized companies deny people when they're very ill, when they're very sick. They take ages to make decisions about tests. It's very, very scary. And we know people who have died because of that. So another important part of that is, well, the city said you can opt out. You can, you don't have to take our Medicare Advantage. You can pay for your supplement. And what's important to know is that a majority of city employees or retirees, especially ones in my union, cannot afford the $2,400 that they wanted to charge us, plus $2,400 for each dependent. DC 37, my union, a third of the people have a pension of under $12,000. So this thing was totally discriminatory from the beginning. And so we started this fight, and so did other organizations. There's New York City Retirees Organization fought it with a lawsuit. We were out in the street and talking to the city council. And the good news is that so far, I think, Jim, you mentioned about the legislation. We've stopped the city from changing it.
No, it's in the city council. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, that legislation was in the city council, and right now, and Martha will talk about it, that's been stopped. But I just want to say, and we can talk about it later, my last thing is that people have to understand this is a federal issue. This is the privatization of healthcare, not only for retirees, but all government workers, and it's going on all over the country. And so we need to fight it on a national level as well.
And that's what.
Thank you for letting me express my anger.
Absolutely. Well, more to come. No, it sounds like there is more to come, because it's also the privatization of everything about our lives, correct? So it's federal issues, and the corporate agenda seems to be operating here too. Is that correct?
Totally. Yes.
Right. Right. Well, let's turn to Martha for again a more expanded history of this.
Well, I think Julie's got most of it, and the issue of privatization is a big piece of that. It's a little bit complicated about what we did, but the heart of it is you can fight City Hall if you're organized, and that's what we had to do. We were Croc itself. Our group is calling ourselves Croc. We were organizing rallies. We were contacting city council. We were contacting, at that time, Eric Adams was borough president, and we asked him what he thought about this de Blasio MLC arrangement that had been made in 2018. And he said it was a bait and switch. He thought it was a terrible thing, right up until he became mayor. And then he thought it was a wonderful thing because it was going to save the city all of $600 million, which sounds like a huge sum of money, except that it amounts to 0.6% of the total city budget. It's nothing. The retiree supplemental care, which is called senior care, is a tiny percent of even the total amount that the city spends on all of its active workers and retiree benefits. It's bubkus. It's nothing. But it's a very big deal if you say $600 million in the papers, and this is going to resonate well with people who want to, quote, save money. And the best way that they found to save money was to take it out of the retirees who have no representation in the unions and have, we're dispersed all over the country. We are in our 80s. Many of us are in our 90s. Some of us are in the hundreds. We are not necessarily equipped with computers or have the agility to fight this thing, but we are fighting it. A piece of the way we took the fight was we were, one of the groups that came into being was with Marianne Pizzatola, who was a dynamite person. She pulled together a legal firm, and she's got a Facebook page, a website, NewYorkCityRetirees.org, and she organized us to hire lawyers. And the lawyers took city council, or rather the city, the mayor, to court. And we won because of something called Administrative Code 12126. And this says in the code that all city workers, retirees, and dependents shall have the same equal health care coverage that will be premium free. And the city can't charge us for the premiums if we opt out of Medicare Advantage and stay with our Medicare and senior care. They did not have the legal right to charge us $200 a month, $400 if you're a husband and wife, $600 if you're a husband and a wife and a dependent adult child. So it's huge. Of course, the city appealed, and we won our case in February of 2022. The city appealed. The appeal was heard in October. The city's appeal was denied. So what have we got? We say we won.
Right.
It sounds wonderful.
Right.
Except what we won was the battle. We didn't win the war yet. And the city, well, there are a number of things. The city immediately decided, okay, they're going to change the law that we just won in court.
Right.
So the way that the law gets changed, this is Administrative Code 12126. It's up to city council to change the law. The mayor can't do it on his own. He had to win over city council. And we had been talking to city council for some time, and suddenly city council was getting deluged with retirees calling up, emailing, phoning, desperate. We had demonstrations outside of City Hall saying, don't change, don't amend 12126, because the way that the city wanted to amend it was to say, we will introduce new classes of workers. We will change the amount of money that we are going to cover for different classes.
Wow.
This is immediately setting retirees against active workers, or teachers against kitchen staff, or uniform workers against administrative staff. You could just see it all in negotiations. It would be constant. It was a divide and conquer. It's the way we know this tactic from way, way back. So we had a major campaign going on for months to deal with city council, and city council looked at it. We had huge hearings. We had 11-hour hearing with the civil service and labor committee. You know, people are coming out with their walkers and their canes. It's difficult, but we did it. And city council said, no, we don't think we want to change this. First of all, it diminishes our power. Secondly, retirees vote, and this doesn't look like a good thing. And so we won in that sense. Again, city council said, hands off. We don't want anything to do with this.
This was last year now, right?
This is very recent.
January?
January, yes.
January 2023. Okay. So, right. Sounds like the war and the battle is over, but it's not.
It's not. Okay. And I'll continue, but others can please jump in. See, what's important to understand is something that we haven't really raised yet. And of course, it's all about money. It's always about money.
Right.
But there's something called the Health Insurance Stabilization Fund, and that's at the heart of this. The Health Insurance Stabilization Fund, it's just a mouthful. I'm going to call it the Stabilization Fund. It was created under Bloomberg in 1984 with the express purpose of providing money in a fund that would take care of any health insurance premiums of active workers that were over and above the stated benchmark in 12-126. It's hard to understand, but there's a benchmark that says we will pay up to this amount for active workers' health premiums.
So we're not talking about retirees yet.
We're not talking about retirees.
Okay.
So this stabilization fund also provides money to each of the unions. There are about 100 city unions. Each of the unions' welfare funds, and the unions use these welfare funds supposedly for health care. Well, they do use them for health care related things, podiatry, eyeglasses, hearing aids, the kind of things that should be covered but aren't very often in healthcare coverage, and that are really necessary, particularly for low-wage workers. Drug plans also. The problem with the stabilization fund is it was misused repeatedly from about 2009 on. It was used as a slush fund to cover non-healthcare related costs, primarily wages for active workers. The most recent one was, I think $1.1 billion was used to pay for teachers' salaries. There was that was withdrawn. These are negotiated deals. The city and the MLC work out a deal to say, yes, we will pay for teachers' raises out of the stabilization fund. So it never appears in.
I'm sorry, who is behind this now? Again, this misuse of the funds. A combination of who? The mayor, union leader, or who was?
It's a negotiation between the city and the municipal labor committee, which represents
all the unions, right?
So,
how did they get away with that? I mean,
but I don't know that it's illegal. It really was a slush fund, but a rainy day fund.
Martha, but maybe Martha.
Yes.
Maybe you can also mention how are the decisions made at the Municipal Labor Council?
The Municipal Labor Committee has negotiates for all the city unions, but it's the two biggest unions are DC 37 and the UFT, and because it's a weighted vote, it means that if the UFT and DC 37 decide or want something, basically that's how the MLC votes. So the upshot of all of this is that the Health insurance stabilization fund, they've had a few $100 million withdrawn here, $1 billion
Right.
there, and pretty soon there's nothing left. So it's
Right.
going broke.
Right.
And this fund is absolutely necessary to the unions to cover the cost
Right.
of active workers' premiums and all these other, the union welfare fund. So that's where we're at now. Along comes Eric Adams, and he says, well, okay, the law says we must provide premium-free health care to retirees. What we're going to do is get rid of Medicare. We're going to institute something called the nuclear option. We will just offer Medicare Advantage for all. And retirees won't have any choice. They can either take it or not take it. But if they don't take it, they're on their own. We're on our own. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of retirees right now who, A, if they know about this fight, they think we've won. And B, many of them have absolutely no idea that this is all going on. So that's kind of where we're at. We're facing the possibility of being faced with only one choice, Medicare Advantage. And all the newspaper stories that Julie highlighted, it's coming out all over that Medicare Advantage is bilking the federal government out of billions of dollars, not just millions, but billions every single year. They are providing much less care than is provided by straight up Medicare plus supplement. It's extremely hard to negotiate, particularly as you get older, blinder, deafer,
Right.
more adult,
More expensive, and
it's way more expensive. So that's
so isn't it curious politically, as we know, Adams has taken so much of Bloomberg's advice and seems to have switched as he got to be mayor more to Bloomberg's position. And of course, that is rooted in the business model. And my question is, the money is there. I mentioned, the $3 trillion profit that corporations have made. Right, that's nationwide, but still, business is doing quite well. What is the relationship between that and the wealth of so many people, and the squeezing of the retirees and workers and so on in these programs? What is the connection that we can make, perhaps politically and economically? Anybody?
Well, you're talking about neoliberalism.
Yeah. And de Blasio identified himself as a progressive. And again, how did he come? He was the one that initially brought this bill out, right? This was in 2007. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was his administration that worked out this deal. And the problem is that healthcare costs are out of control.
Right.
And we know this, it's all across the country. It's not just a situation for retirees in New York City. It's all over the country. The United States, we all know this, that we pay twice as much as anybody else in any other country. We don't have any national health care, which is what we need.
Right.
And it's because of privatization that is now galloping. There are other solutions. And at the time that de Blasio in 2018 was negotiating this with the MLC, the negotiators looked at this and said, there are many ways that we could go to investigate to rein in healthcare costs. They had a few, I think there were 7 or 8. I've made note of about 4 of them. But
please tell us about those. Yeah.
Well, because the one they chose was the worst one, which was, switch the retirees onto Medicare Advantage. But I don't know if others want to jump in, but right now what we're looking at and what we're proposing, what CROC is supporting, is a plan that the Professional Staff Congress came up with, which is one of the unions that's part of the city. And they have actual health benefits and analysts working as professors at CUNY who really have some good ideas. there are two funds. One is the stabilization fund that I mentioned.
Right.
There is another fund called the Retiree Health Benefit Trust. And its job, it was created in 2006, and its job is to pay for retiree healthcare benefits, including both retirees before they reach Medicare age, i.e. before they reach 65 or 66 now. You can tell my age because I was 65. And those who are now Medicare eligible. And it covers our costs out of that trust fund. And the fund is reimbursed each year by the amount that is withdrawn. It has built up to the point now where there is actually, it's got a surplus of almost $1 billion. If you take into account the amount of money that will be withdrawn for retiree health benefits, and that's including the senior care in fiscal year 2023, once that's paid out, there should be roughly $1 billion left in that trust fund. So the PSC came up with a plan, which I think is brilliant and which Kroc is supporting. And now about 2/3 of City Council is very interested in. And this plan works like this. Instead of reimbursing the trust fund entirely for 2 years, hold back about $500,000 a year and take that money, instead put it into the stabilization fund. That will keep the stabilization fund afloat for a couple of years, and during that time, take a time out and figure out what needs to be done to rein in these extortionate healthcare costs. And the things that we can do, first of all, the city it's covering 1 million people. It's got a base of 1 million people to cover. The city itself could set up its own insurance plan. And we would then save the huge amounts of money that are being spent currently on private for-profit insurance companies. We would reduce the administrative costs to the normal administrative costs of Medicare, which is like 5%, 6%. Instead of this 17, 18%, there's no profit, there's no advertising needed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So self-insurance is one way we could go. It'll take time to set up. The other thing we could do is get the city to negotiate directly with the private nonprofit hospitals for a limit on the reimbursement rate that the city is providing. The cost of hospitals is out of sight. And some of the other private unions, 32BJ is also fighting on this score. And 32BJ has done some great things. It's a route that the city could go.
And the health workers would support you on this too.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
And
definitely.
I'm just wondering now, if you get the city council behind this, does that mean that they can, in a sense, bypass Adams, or does he have another chance to muck this up?
I don't think we're in a position to answer that.
Okay.
I don't know, Julie.
But it sounds very reasonable.
Well, the only thing I can say about that is that the city council, as we were talking about, can deal with this legislatively, but there's a 2018 agreement between the Municipal Labor Committee and the city, the Adams administration, the Office of Labor Relations, that they can negotiate healthcare. And that wasn't started in 2018. It goes back a number of years. They can negotiate healthcare benefits. So we're not 100% sure legally that they can do that, but that's the nuclear option that Martha was talking about, that it is possible that they could negotiate and put everyone in one plan. And that's the concern.
But Jim, could I add something to what Julie was saying?
Absolutely.
I think that what you're pointing out in terms of the city council members, at the hearing on January the 9th, it was shown to them the amount of people that went and attended there from 8 o'clock in the morning until it was 11 hours. And the retirees were the last ones to testify, which is a travesty. They should have been the first ones. But they were the last ones to testify. And I think that they should keep that in their souls and their minds, the city council members, because when they were elected to represent us.
Mhm.
And hopefully they will keep that will within their heart to stand by the retirees and the active workers, which will also be affected, and fight along with us, all of them, publicly, not to stay on the fence. Some of them decided to stay quiet, and they went like, okay, we're still exploring and we're still considering. I think that at this point, every one of them should be saying, no matter what, we're going to stand by the municipal workers and the retirees. So I hope that programs like this, like the one that you are presenting and sharing with the public,
Right.
will educate, and people that are not able to maybe look at the computers, at least they will be able to see your program, and more people will be motivated to keep educating and keep outreaching and telling the people what is going on, so that we can fight and preserve those healthcare benefits. But we need the city council to stand by us, and every single person, including the mayor. It's time for him to do the right thing.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The strategy is to keep applying the pressure, and through the education and through programs like this and out in the streets and so on. It often intrigues me. Why wouldn't a mayor, Adams or anyone else, this is such a reasonable solution. Why wouldn't you identify with it? It's a very popular way of solving the issue, and you'd have a lot of people vote for you to
Yes.
do that. I don't quite understand why that isn't the case. Why this is a no-brainer in a sense. But again, we're in New York. But actually, I'm not in New York right now. I'm in Florida, so I'm seeing some of the retirees down here too.
You're not safe either.
I know.
But
Exactly.
I think that another thing that we should point out, and I hope
Yes.
that Martha and Julie can give us more insight about that, is that most of the unions are going to run out of the contracts, and the mayor is using this piece of the action to hold negotiating, and that is not right either. So we all have to be aware of all this deals behind doors. And as a person who just retired last week, I decided to get involved with this cause since last semester, because I felt that these are the kinds of things that you never think, just like Julie was saying, you never think that the city is going to be even mingling with it or touching it or affecting it. You
Right.
think that is there for forever, and all of a sudden you're retiring and you see, oh my God, this is happening to all of us. So I encourage everybody to get involved, not only the retirees, which at this point I'm in awe with their bravery, their imagination,
Absolutely.
their passion in the streets. And I hope that the actives also join them and join us now in the battle.
Right. Help the audience understand the connection. You were talking about New York City creating this program. What is the possible connection to what you're trying to achieve and a national health plan? Why is that so difficult to accomplish? It's always about the money, and it's always just like back in the 60s, it was about discussions of welfare, for example, and attempts by my own mentor, Richard Cloward and Francis Piven, to establish a national welfare rights organization that would make it a federal a program. So that is also seemingly a logical way of going. Why aren't we able to do that? What is the connection there, do you think?
Uh, maybe to state the obvious, the Center for Medicare Services and the HHS, the federal government, is very controlled by the insurance companies, by their contributions to all of our senators who make these decisions about healthcare. It's really a tough one because the federal government is paying and promoting on behalf of these insurance companies, promoting this situation. And it's important for people to know, yeah, let's fight the mayor, let's fight City Hall here. But this is going on in many states all over the country for the same reason, that there's a promotion of privatization and costs are high. And Minnesota, Chicago, Washington State, Delaware, Buffalo City, City of Buffalo, it's going on everywhere. And we need to fight it on a national level.
Also. And particularly in the South also, correct? And some of the parts of the country that have never had very strong unions.
We know of when we're trying to do some research to find out more on which states, but it's a deal for all of these mayors and governors. Hey, we'll pay for this health care and you guys don't have to pay for anything. So, it makes it easy for them to show that they're balancing their budget.
And it's also important to understand that the subsidy that covers Medicare Advantage amounts to about 75% of the money that would be available to a person who is covered by Medicare. In other words, the subsidy itself is really a dramatic reduction in the amount of money that is available for healthcare coverage. But I think, you're touching on a point. One of the things that is so baffling is why unions do not get solidly behind the need for Medicare for all, why unions are standing in the way of New York Healthcare Act, the New York Health Act. I mean, if we had statewide health coverage, then we wouldn't even be discussing this. If we had national health coverage, we would not be discussing this. And you think back to the ACA, so-called Obamacare. He didn't put in the public single payer option. He left it out. And that is dramatically reducing the effectiveness and the coverage that's available for the ACA people. And it is putting money into the hands of the private sector, which is what it's all about. Biden gets a whole lot of his money from big pharma. All of the presidents, all of the senators and representatives, very, very, very few of them are not being swayed by this kind of private money. And, this goes back to Citizens United, and it goes back and back and back.
Right. That was good. That was my next question. Right. Exactly. And we saw what happened to Bernie when he tried to do the right thing.
He was still trying, by the way.
Yeah, he still is, right. So where are we today in this struggle? We're waiting for what now? The city council, more members to come.
We're in
more solidly. Tell us about where we're at.
We're in a state of a kind of a hiatus point at this point. We're waiting to see what the mayor does. We have a second court case going because at the beginning of January of 2022, the city arrangement with Emblem allowed them to start charging us co-pays of $15 for every time we went to a doctor. And when you're my age, you're going to a lot of doctors. People who are getting physical therapy or chemo or any of these things, maybe going 3-4 times a week, they're getting hit with $15 payments every time they go. If you're living on $25,000 a year or less, those co-pays really add up. And so we are back in court thanks to the New York City Retirees.org people with the court case, and we've got an injunction now against charging the copays. So for as long as that injunction is, until that court case is settled, we don't know whether we're going to be responsible for copays. If Adams decides he's going for the nuclear option, I'm sure we will be going back to the courts. But we have to not just rely on the courts. You can't just rely on the courts. You need the people. And we have been working to make it evident to active workers, because they're the ones who elect the union leadership. We have no voice in the unions. We have none. Once you retire, that's it. So the active workers have to know, they have to understand that they're going after the retirees because we are the most vulnerable. If they get away with it with us, they're going to go after them too. And this is, old news, divide and conquer. So the active workers are starting to understand that this is a threat to them. Those that know about it, we're going to keep on working as best we can. We don't have a list of the names and contact information for 250,000 retirees. The city has, we don't. So we're doing it word of mouth, social media, best we can.
Right. That is such a crucial point that you just made there. And so important to understand that the divide and conquer strategy, and we just need to have the solidarity. And so you do have allies. You do have organizers, right, that are reaching out to the various groups that you need to have support you. And they've got to see it. It's sort of like, again, Reverend William Barber's fusion politics here. They've got to see it's in their interest to support you, even though they're not retired now. They're going to be the next ones to get hit. So how optimistic are you on that? Again, with the organizing of other groups that can be allies for you that aren't presently seeing this directly in their own lives.
I think that one of the things that's happened, Jim, is that we and other organizations, New York City Retirees and others, have reached out endlessly to people who are current workers. And as much as we've been successful, people understand that they're trying to play us off against each other, that they will be retirees. And they're also being threatened that if we don't settle, they won't get a raise, or they're going to have to pay more money. So, as you're saying, playing each other off against each other. But when workers hear about this, they get it. They get it.
Yeah. Lizette, you want to jump in here on?
Yes, I would like to. I was putting something in the chat. I think that we need, just piggybacking on what you were saying, Jim, we need the support of the media also. It's very difficult to counterattack this narrative of the city saying that we have no money, therefore you have to sacrifice now. And we have to keep pounding the message to everybody. The city, just like you said, the city has money. And it's not going to be, this budget is not going to be balanced on the back of the retirees nor of the active members. So I hope that even through CUNY, we have students there. The students have parents. The parents have neighbors. So let's all as a community keep reaching out to that community to educate, because it's not easy for the retirees to contact everybody. But this can become a network that keeps building up and keeps expanding. And we need to do that while the city council and the mayor decide what are they going to be doing and what are they going to decide. We have to keep organizing and educating ourselves so that we can keep fighting back. This is not over. This is going to take a long time. So we better get ready.
Sounds like it. I'm just curious, has the New York Times done any favorable reporting on this at all?
Well,
the good thing with the New York Times has been that they have published a lot of information about the disadvantage of Medicare Advantage. I mean, that has been covered, and people have been listening and reading about that. This is an inferior health care if we get Medicare Advantage, and that has to be reminded to everybody. Every time that people indicate Medicare Advantage, it's a disadvantage. Like you said at the beginning of the introduction, it's not good. A lot of times you're going to get less than what you're supposed to be getting at your stage when you're retiring. So New York Times has not been directly informing about this fight in New York City,
Right.
but the independent news, yes, City Bites and the independent.
Amy Goodman on
Yeah.
Democracy Now.
I'm sorry?
Democracy Now. You've been on Democracy Now with Amy?
You know what? That would be great, Jim, if you could help us with that.
Let's do that.
We have been saying that with Juan Gonzalez.
We've been on a lot of the BAI shows, but we haven't been on Amy. Yeah.
Well, Amy is there. We've got
And Juan,
let's
yes.
contact her, and I know Juan is in Chicago now, but he's been on this show, and let's work on that.
But Jim, Julie has something to add.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Julie.
I'm sorry. Just on that that level of the publicity and Amy, I just I want to say a couple of things about this in general, and I know keep beating. I want people to remember that this problem has to do a lot with taxation and the 1% in this country, and that the fact that we have to struggle over little dollars between active workers and retirees is part of that whole picture. And also that New York State has been trying to pass a single payer act for years, and we have to focus on that and get this good health care for everyone. And also, the New York Times has been publishing these articles saying that 12 of these big insurance companies have been accused of fraud, and they have documentation. And what has the federal government done about it?
Right.
Nothing.
See, Julia, it's been about 46 minutes into the show. Now you're letting loose here now. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Now, all right, you're making me upset too. I mean, we got trillions for wars and tens of billions to send to what's turning out to be an absolutely stupid, futile war in Ukraine and so on. And yet you're absolutely right. Relatively speaking, this is a small amount of money. It's absolutely ridiculous that we're fighting over these small sums.
Wow.
And these are people's lives. These are, again, our grandparents, our parents, ourselves, if we live that long, and so on. And it's so self-destructive and self-sabotaging.
Right.
We need, Sigmund Freud or some. I'm working with a wonderful, wonderful psychiatrist, James Gilligan. But this comes almost to the point where we're dealing with some really mindless, so irrational beings at this point. Self-destructive, toxic, traumatic policies and programs. It's mind-boggling. But again, we've got to push on, push ahead. And as you say, through the media, and again, what's so important is you have an issue that deep down affects everyone, and they know it. And what you're doing is enlightening people to what they really feel at a gut level. And again, it's a matter of channeling and structuring this into more political and media circles, so that we can win this thing. And as again you said, this is going to take a while, isn't it? This is a long struggle.
Yes.
Well,
indeed.
the longest struggle is for everyone in this country to have good health care. That's the longest struggle. And those of us who are in our 80s are not giving up on that. We're gonna fight for that too, because everybody should have that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we just have 2 or 3 minutes more for the show. How can people reach you and get involved in this? And there's a lot of people out there who retired, not who have the time and perhaps to help you on this, because this is, you need bodies out there. You need people that are going to be able to reach out to other people and organize. So tell us how we can reach you.
Lisette, did you want to do that?
Yes, I'm trying to put the email in the chat so that you can share it. Okay, so that you will be able to share that.
Take your time on that. So this all started with you two, correct? Martha and Julia. I mean, this is.
Oh no, not just us.
I mean, the resistance, though. I mean,
This group started with us, but the resistance has been very, very broad, broad in retirees and every union and great organizations. We're just a little piece of it, but our little piece started in Brooklyn.
And just like Martha said, I think that we have to also praise the work of the New York City Organization of Retirees that is led by Marianne Pisitola.
Yes,
has,
I've heard a lot about her.
Yes.
I think
and Jim, on that one, if I don't know if it will help to say it, people should look at their website, nycretirees.org, for updates. NYC Retirees, all small letters.org. There are a lot of great updates on that. And also, we have a newsletter. Our organization has a newsletter, and we send out updates. And if people want to get on our mailing list, it's CROC NYC 22, Croc New York City 22 at Gmail. So those are two pretty easy ways to get updates, to join the fight, to find out what's going on.
We should emphasize.
Go ahead.
And we should emphasize that they don't have to be retired yet.
no,
They can. Yeah. They should be joining even if they're not retired.
Absolutely.
Retirees in training.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it has been so wonderful. It's been my honor to have you on the show, and I've learned a lot. I know our audience has learned a lot, and just keep up the good fight, and we're going to win this thing. And let's talk about ways in which the Radical Imagination can reach out and help. And one way is, of course, getting Amy. We got to get you guys on Amy's show and so on. But there are other ways of working with this. And again, I appreciate you so much and what you're doing. And it's you're speaking about life here and the importance of treating people humanely, and it's not that difficult. And again, the money is there, and the creative solutions that you've come up with already telling us this seems so reasonable and so rational and so humane. So let's keep pushing, and let's fight on and win this thing. So again, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you so very, very much for watching us on the Radical Imagination this week. This is Jim Vrettos. We'll see you again next week on the Radical Imagination.